The following stories are inspired by real accounts and urban legends surrounding Craigslist encounters. While many people use online marketplaces safely every day, these tales highlight the rare but chilling exceptions, when a free couch comes with a sinister past, or a simple pickup leads to something far more disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. These stories may contain themes of isolation, violence, and the supernatural. Always use caution when meeting strangers or responding to anonymous ads. What seems like a good deal might cost you more than you bargained for. Story 1. My name's Lisa, and I used to think I had a decent radar for weird situations. I'm not easily rattled, especially when it comes to people or furniture. Oddly enough, I always prided myself on having a sixth sense for pieces with a story behind them. Something about the scratches, the dents, the way drawers stuck just a little too much. It made me feel like I was living alongside history, not just consuming it. That instinct kicked in hard when I moved into my first solo apartment. It wasn't much. A crooked little one-bedroom above a bakery in Carling Springs. The kind of place where the scent of fresh bread in the morning makes up for the sloped floors and radiators that clang like they're haunted. The windows were warped and the outlets buzzed when I plugged in too many things. But it was mine. My space. And I swore I wouldn't fill it with the sterile, soulless stuff you get from chain stores. I wanted furniture with character, used, repurposed, maybe even a little broken, because it meant it had survived. Just like me. That's why I was always browsing Craigslist, not even the for sale section, just free. That's where the real treasures are buried, if you're willing to dig through the junk. It was around 9 p.m. on a Thursday when I saw the listing. Just one line: antique armoire, very old, must go tonight, no flakes, no photo, no price, no frills. That kind of vagueness usually screams trap, but for some reason it gnawed at me. There was something about it that felt personal, like the post wasn't for just anyone, it was for someone specific. I couldn't explain it. I messaged them anyway. Is this still available? The reply came 5 minutes later. Still here, must be gone tonight. Come at 10, don't be late. No name, no phone number, just an address in a neighborhood I'd never heard of before, Maple Hollow. It was about 20 minutes from me, tucked behind an old industrial corridor I usually avoided. Still, without fully realizing what I was doing, I grabbed my keys and headed out. I told myself it was just about the furniture. I needed a wardrobe after all. But deep down I knew I was chasing something else. The mystery. The possibility of discovering a rare Gothic treasure. Maybe something Victorian, with ornate carvings and locked compartments. I was already imagining the refinishing project, the Instagram photos. I wanted to own a story. The drive got weirder the closer I got. Maple Hollow wasn't even on Google Maps unless you zoomed all the way in. The streets had names but no streetlights, and the houses were sparse, set far back from the road, swallowed in shadow and overgrowth. Trees arched overhead like ribs. It felt like I was driving into something that didn't want to be found. When I pulled up, I almost turned around. The house looked more like a mausoleum than a home. The iron gate out front was crooked, rusted, wrapped in vines. The hedge beside it was so overgrown it had started to eat the mailbox. The house itself sat far from the road, hidden behind years of neglect. No lights, no cars, no sound. I kept the engine running for a minute, watching, waiting for a curtain to move or a porch light to flicker on. Nothing. Just that oppressive, suffocating stillness. My gut twisted. Every instinct I had screamed at me to leave. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath, grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The air was heavier than it should have been, the kind of thick that clings to your clothes. I crunched up the leaf-strewn walkway, knocked once. Before I could knock again, the door creaked open on its own. Pitch black inside, not dim, pitch black. "Hello?" I called. A man's voice answered from somewhere deep in the house, low, flat. "Come in, it's in the back." That was it. No greeting, no thanks for coming, just a statement, a direction. Something about the voice was wrong. It didn't match the setting. It was too even, too emotionless, but I stepped inside anyway. The air hit me first, wet and rotten, like food left too long in a fridge that lost power. My boots stuck slightly to the floor with each step, the boards swollen and soft beneath me. My flashlight cut through the dark, revealing sheets draped over furniture, peeling wallpaper, and paintings on the walls, all of them scratched out, not vandalized, erased, like someone had carefully removed the faces with a knife. In the back, the voice said again, closer now, just behind the hall. I turned, heart hammering, but there was no one in sight. I should have left. I should have turned around, gotten in my car and driven home, but I kept walking, drawn down that narrow hallway, my flashlight flickering slightly as if the batteries were draining faster than they should. My fingers felt cold. My breath came in shallow bursts. At the end of the hall, instead of a door, there was a curtain, heavy, velvety. I hesitated, then pushed it aside. The room was small, windowless, lit only by my trembling beam of light. And there it was, the armoire. It was massive, towering, nearly touched the ceiling, made of some dark wood that didn't reflect light, just drank it in. The carvings weren't decorative. They were symbols, some flowing and spiral-like, others jagged, sharp. They looked more like warnings than flourishes. The legs were carved into clawed feet. The handles were iron, twisted into shapes that felt wrong. The moment I saw it, I felt sick. Not physically, not even emotionally. It was like something deep in me, something primal, recognized danger. Then I felt it. Someone behind me. I turned fast. He was there. The man, tall, too tall, shoulders hunched forward like he'd been standing still for days. His coat hung from him in thick, dusty folds. It looked old, like something pulled from a trunk in an attic. His face didn't match the voice. His smile was too wide, his eyes too still. "Take it," he said. "Free, just open it, make sure it works." "Works?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Open it," he repeated. My body moved before I made the decision. I approached, reached for the handle. It was ice cold, so cold my skin burned. I opened the doors. Empty. Just shelves. But the smell, coppery, moldy, like something dead had been locked inside for decades. I turned back. The man was gone. No footsteps, no creak of a door, just gone. Most people would have fled, I know that. I probably should have, but I didn't. Instead, I backed out, pulled my car up the driveway, and somehow, don't ask me how, I got the thing loaded into my SUV. I drove it home, unloaded it, pushed it into my living room. It looked wrong there. Too heavy, too ancient. It made everything else in the room seem temporary, like it had always been there, and I was the intruder. That night, I went to bed at midnight. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up. No dream, just a jolt. Then I heard it. Thud! I sat up. Thud, louder this time, from the living room. I grabbed my flashlight and phone, crept down the hallway. The armoire doors were wide open. I closed them, locked them. The next night, same thing. Thud, doors open. I moved it to the hallway. Still happened. Then came the whispers. Not words, just breath. Footsteps that didn't match mine. By the fourth night, I stopped sleeping. I sat across from it, waiting. At 3:12 a.m., a whisper, clear this time. "Let me out." That morning, I packed a bag and left. Rented a storage unit 2 towns over, no ID, paid in cash. Locked the armoire in there with 3 chains and left. I didn't leave my name. 2 weeks later, a call from a blocked number. The storage company. Someone had broken into the unit. No signs of forced entry. But the armoire was gone. Now I live in a new city. Everything I own is new or gifted. No more Craigslist, no more mysterious finds. But sometimes I still check the free section. And sometimes I see it. Same post, same wording. Very old armoire, must go tonight, no flakes. And I wonder, what happens when someone opens it next? Story 2. My name's Lisa, and back when this happened, I had just graduated college. Like a lot of people that age, I was pretending I had things figured out when I absolutely didn't. I was working a food delivery job to scrape by and living in a rundown apartment in a sketchy part of Dayton. It was cheap, and it looked it. The kind of place you don't bring friends to. The paint was peeling in patches. The hall lights flickered like they were trying to blink out of existence. And my front door stuck so badly I had to slam my shoulder into it every time I came home. Inside, the apartment was as bare as my bank account. A stained mattress on the floor, 2 folding chairs I found near a dumpster, and a single lamp with a cracked shade that buzzed and flickered like it was haunted. No curtains. Just a bedsheet duct-taped over the window. Still, I kept telling myself that if I could just get a couch, just one real piece of furniture, the place might feel like something more than a squat. Something lived in, something mine. I couldn't afford anything new, not even cheap IKEA stuff. Craigslist was my only hope. I practically lived in the free section. Most of it was junk, busted TVs, stained mattresses, and weirdly, a surprising number of used toilets. But one night, a post caught my eye. The photo was dark, grainy, barely lit, but I could still make out a couch that looked nice. Mid-century style, olive green, wide, deep cushions. It looked better than anything I'd ever owned. The post was simple, still comfy. First come, first served, must pick up tonight. It had been posted just 10 minutes before I saw it. I messaged the guy. His name was listed as Brian. He replied almost instantly, just an address and a message that said, "Come ASAP, leaving soon." No pleasantries, no chit-chat, no questions, just cold efficiency. Something about it felt off, too fast, too clipped, but I was hyped. Scoring a couch like that for free, it felt like a win. And honestly, I needed one. That little surge of hope drowned out all the red flags waving in my brain. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The address led me way farther out than I expected, miles past where streetlights got patchy and road signs became rare. Eventually, I found myself in what looked like a forgotten industrial zone. Empty lots, chain-link fences curling with rust, warehouses with busted windows and weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement. I saw no homes, no apartments, just slabs of grey concrete and the occasional flickering bulb buzzing above a dead-end street. Still, I kept going. People store stuff in weird places, I told myself. Maybe it was just a storage unit. I finally pulled up to the building, a squat, flat structure with no windows. It didn't even look like a place you could walk into. The only sign of life was a white van parked off to the side, engine idling. Its windows were completely blacked out. I couldn't see anyone inside. I sat there for a moment, my stomach twisting. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Brian. "Back door's open. Come in." I got out of the car, walked around to the side of the building. Sure enough, there was a door propped open just a few inches, letting out a thin slice of darkness. I couldn't see a thing beyond it. No light, no sound. The air smelled like oil and something sharp, like rust and chemicals that had been sitting too long in a damp place. Something deep in me screamed to leave, but I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the dim bulb hanging overhead, swinging slightly, casting crooked shadows along the unfinished walls. The place smelled like old metal and mildew. The floor creaked beneath me, no furniture in sight, no couch. I called out, "Hello?" and immediately regretted it. From somewhere deeper in the building, a voice answered, calm, low, "Back here." I followed it. The hallway I stepped into was narrow, lined with unmarked doors. No numbers, no signs, just dry wall that looked warped with moisture. Each step I took echoed in the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of silence that pushed against your ears. Finally, the hallway opened into a larger room. This one was better lit, and there it was. The couch, same as the photo, green upholstery, wide cushions. It looked perfect. But what surrounded it made my blood run cold. Behind the couch was a video camera on a tripod. A blue tarp stretched out underneath it. Next to that, a pile of zip ties, a roll of duct tape, and a hacksaw, neatly arranged, deliberate, like a checklist. At first, my brain tried to come up with a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a film set, a prank, something else. But the longer I stared, the more I felt like the room was waiting for something, or someone. Then I turned around. A man stood just a few feet away, blocking the entrance. Tall, hoodie pulled up, face partially hidden. He wasn't moving, just standing there. In one hand he held a metal rod. He let it swing gently, tapping it into his open palm. "I think I got the wrong place," I said, taking a slow step back. He stepped forward. I bolted. I ran harder than I ever have, heart pounding. I hit every door on the way out. First, locked. Second, locked. Third, barely opened. I squeezed inside and slammed it shut behind me. It was a closet. Small, cramped, no exit. I crouched in the dark, my ears straining. Then I heard them. Two voices. One was his, calm, cold. The other was new. "He go in?" "Yeah, shouldn't take long." My hands went numb. My whole body froze. There were at least two of them, maybe more. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared through a crack in the door, watching for shadows, listening for footsteps. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time twisted in that dark. Then I heard a door open, footsteps moving away. Silence. I waited a little longer, then I ran. Eventually, I found a door that opened into another unit. This one looked real. A workshop, dusty tools, a radio playing classic rock, and a man standing there, cigarette in one hand, wrench in the other, staring at me like I'd dropped out of the ceiling. "Jesus, you okay?" he said. I couldn't speak, I just gasped, "Call the cops!" He locked the door, sat me down, and made the call without asking questions. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the building. Empty. No couch, no tarp, no hacksaw, no camera. The white van was gone. The Craigslist ad, deleted. Brian's number, disconnected. Nothing. It was like it had all been scrubbed. They asked me if I was sure about what I saw, if I might have misunderstood something, panicked, imagined it. I didn't argue, I just wanted out. I moved out a few days later, took what little I owned, stuffed it in the back of my car, and drove until I couldn't see the city skyline anymore. I never went back. I threw away the hoodie I wore that night, couldn't stand to see it, and I haven't touched Craigslist since. But sometimes when I'm feeling reckless, I check the free section again, and every now and then I see it. Same couch, same photo, same caption. Still comfy, must pick up tonight. Story 3. My name's Evan, and I make a modest living doing freelance IT work, setting up routers, recovering lost files, removing viruses for people who think password 123 is still a clever joke. It's not exactly thrilling, but it pays the bills and keeps me floating between gigs. Sometimes when jobs are slow, I scroll Craigslist. Half the time it's just out of boredom, but once in a while I find something interesting, or, in rare cases, something that still keeps me up at night. That's how I ended up at Rick and Mara's house. The ad didn't set off alarms at first. It was under household gigs and simply read, "House sitter needed, $150 night, 2 nights. Must be okay with dogs. No address listed, just a phone number. Seemed like easy money. I figured there had to be a catch, but my bank account was nearly flatlining and I was in no position to be picky. I sent a quick text. Rick called me the next morning. His voice was calm and oddly cheerful, the kind of cheer that feels practiced. He apologized repeatedly for the short notice, for the strange setup, for how messy things were. He said he and his wife had to leave town for an unexpected family emergency and needed someone to stay in their home and watch their beagle Basil. Our little guy, he called him, like he was talking about a toddler. The job seemed easy enough. Feed Basil, take him out to the backyard and stay overnight. Then Rick added, almost like an afterthought, "Oh, and one more thing. Please don't go into the basement. There's nothing down there you'll need. Also, if the landline rings, just ignore it. Let it go." That probably should have been the moment I said, "Actually, I'm good." But the money was tempting, and I was desperate enough to ignore the red flags. That Friday evening, I drove out to the address Rick texted. It was in a suburb I'd never heard of before. Clean, eerily quiet, almost too perfect. Manicured lawns, pristine driveways, not a single toy or tool out of place. It felt more like a movie set than a real neighborhood. Rick met me at the door. He was tall, maybe in his mid-50s, with a graying beard and these tired, haunted eyes that didn't match his overly polite demeanor. Mara, his wife, hovered in the background. She didn't say much, just smiled. Once, thin-lipped, and avoided eye contact like I wasn't really there. Then there was Basil, a slow, weary beagle with cloudy eyes and a limp in his back leg. He sniffed my shoes, sighed, and plopped down like he'd already given up on me. Rick gave me a brief tour. The house was spotless, but not in a normal, we keep things clean way, more like the rooms had been professionally staged. Everything beige, symmetrical, lifeless. No family photos, no clutter, no signs that real people lived there. We stopped near the basement door. Rick paused and rested his hand on the knob. "Remember," he said, voice lowering just a bit, "don't go down there. The door sticks anyway. Nothing important there." Then they left. No hugs, no lingering goodbyes, just the sound of their SUV pulling out of the driveway. That first night was uneventful. I made a frozen pizza, watched a movie, and tried to relax. Basil snored at my feet. He didn't seem particularly affectionate, but I chalked it up to his age. Around midnight, I got ready for bed and went to the guest room. It was like the rest of the house, clean, cold, and unsettlingly hollow. I just started to doze off when I heard it. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. I sat up, heart thudding. Basil jumped off the bed and stood by the door, ears raised, body tense. Then, again, 3 more knocks. this time unmistakably from the basement. I stepped out into the hallway. Silence. I approached the basement door and pressed my ear to it. No footsteps, no voices, just stillness. I turned the lock, just in case, and backed away. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the house made my skin crawl. At one point, I swore I heard a whisper, faint and low, drifting down the hallway. Around 3 a.m., I thought I heard the landline ring, a single, lonely tone, but when I checked it, the cord was loose. It wasn't even plugged in. The next morning, I texted Rick. "Hey, heard knocking from the basement last night. Should I be worried?" No reply. I tried to shake it off, took Basil out back, made coffee, turned on the TV for background noise, but the house felt wrong, off. And not just because of the knocking. There were weird things, like one kitchen drawer that was filled entirely with identical scissors, dozens of them, all the same. Another drawer was stacked with perfectly aligned, unopened notebooks, and a hallway closet, filled from top to bottom with gauze bandages and medical tape, like someone was prepping for a disaster they hadn't told anyone about. And Basil? He refused to walk near the basement. I tried coaxing him. The moment we got halfway down the hall, he froze, tail tucked, low growl. He wouldn't move until I carried him back to the living room. That night, I didn't even bother with the guest room. I camped out on the couch, every light on, phone in hand. Just after 2 a.m., it happened again. 3 knocks. Then a voice. "Let me out," Basil growled, a deep, guttural sound. I'd never heard anything like it from him before. Then again, I'd never heard a voice coming from a locked basement either. "Please, I'm still down here," it said, desperate, human. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I crept toward the door, phone shaking in my hand. I tried calling Rick again, straight to voicemail. I should have left. I knew I should have left. Instead, I unlocked the door and opened it. The basement was pure black. The light switch at the top clicked uselessly. I pointed my flashlight down. The stairs disappeared into shadows. Then, movement, just a flicker, the edge of something shifting. Then came the sound, fast, dragging footsteps, coming up the stairs. I slammed the door, locked it, stumbled back. Basil barked once and bolted behind the couch. Then, thud, something hit the door from the other side. I sat there all night, every light on, Basil curled up beside me, shaking. As soon as the sky began to lighten, I grabbed my stuff, scooped Basil into the car, and left. I didn't care about the money, I just wanted out. Before I crossed the neighborhood exit, I sent one last text. "What is in your basement?" Rick replied a few hours later. "Thanks for watching, Basil. Payment sent. Do not contact us again." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just silence. I reported what happened, told the police I heard someone calling for help from the basement. They came, checked it out. No signs of forced entry. Nothing out of place. They said maybe I dreamt it, maybe it was old plumbing. Weeks later, I drove past the house. I don't even know why. Morbid curiosity. Maybe. The place was empty. A for sale sign stood crooked on the lawn. All the windows were shuttered, except the basement window. That one had a curtain, and as I slowed the car, it shifted, just slightly, like someone was standing behind it, watching. I haven't taken a single house-sitting gig since. I deleted the Craigslist app. I deadbolt my own basement door every night, even though there's nothing down there. At least I hope there isn't. Story 4. I make most of my living shooting wedding portraits, the occasional graduation session, and a few local businesses that need product shots for their Etsy pages. It's steady enough work, even if a bit monotonous. But the thing that actually gets my blood going, old gear, forgotten film reels, vintage lenses with scratches that whisper stories. I've always had a soft spot for the history baked into used photography equipment. Something about touching an object that's captured moments I'll never see. There's a thrill in that. That's why I spend way too much time scouring Craigslist and estate sale listings. Most of the time it's junk or overpriced hand-me-downs, but occasionally you stumble across something strange, something that feels off, but too good to pass up. That's what happened the night I saw the listing. Canon EOS 5D Mark III with 50mm 1.2 lens, $40, must go today. No backstory, no explanation, just a single blurry photo of the camera and lens sitting on a cracked linoleum floor. The lighting was bad, tinged yellow from a nearby lamp, I guessed, and the image was grainy enough that I almost dismissed it. But I knew that lens, even beat to hell, that glass alone could fetch nearly $2,000. Knew the setup was worth triple the asking price. My gut twisted the moment I saw it. It screamed scam, but before I had time to think it through, I was already typing out an email, asking if it was still available. The response came 5 minutes later. If you can come now, it's yours. Bring cash. Don't be late. No name, no pleasantries, just a dropped pin to an address I'd never heard of, way out in the industrial edge of town, where the streets start to crack and the buildings rot from the inside out. I should have walked away. Everything about it screamed don't, but greed is louder than caution sometimes. I told myself I'd be in and out in 10 minutes, no fuss. I grabbed $40 in cash, stuffed it in my jacket and headed out. The neighborhood was the kind of place your GPS warns you about. Every other streetlight flickered or was completely dead. Warehouses stood empty, skeletal, with tagged-up loading bays and twisted fences. The house was part of a decaying duplex. The neighboring unit collapsed in on itself, windows shattered, door hanging by one hinge, vines coiling up the siding like they were trying to strangle the structure. But the number matched. A rusted for sale sign leaned at an angle near the porch. The lawn was nothing but patchy mud and weeds. The porch light above the door buzzed like a dying insect, flickering weakly as I stepped up. I raised my hand to knock, but barely touched the door when it opened fast, too fast. The man who answered looked rough. He was tall and gaunt, early 40s maybe, wearing a grey hoodie with stains down the front and bandages wrapped carelessly around one hand. His skin was pale, not like a vampire movie, but like someone who hadn't seen daylight in weeks. The hollows under his eyes were purple and deep. "You're early," he muttered, then without waiting, "Come in." I hesitated for a second, then stepped inside. The smell hit immediately, stale drywall, damp carpet, rusted metal, not quite mouldy, not quite rotten, just wrong. The interior looked like it had been abandoned mid-move. No photos, no furniture, except a single wooden chair dead center in the living room, facing a bare wall. A grimy mattress leaned against the far side of the room. The floor tile was cracked, and the walls were blotchy with discoloration, as if someone had started painting and given up halfway through. Ben, he hadn't said his name, but I was already calling him that in my head, walked down a hallway without looking back. No small talk, no offer to sit, just silence. I followed. The carpet in the hallway was damp. My shoes made faint squishing sounds with every step. I tried to ignore it. He opened a door to what might have been a bedroom once. It stuck in the frame, and he had to shove it open with his shoulder. Inside was a crooked lamp, a pair of battered suitcases, a box filled with lens filters, and a padded camera bag propped in the corner. "There it is," he said, nodding toward the bag. I approached cautiously, squatting to unzip it. The Canon 5D body looked clean, no visible damage. The lens was attached and clicked off smoothly. I powered it on, battery full. I raised it, took a test shot of the far wall, and tapped into the gallery. There were photos already saved on the memory card. The first few were generic. Trees, rooftops, power lines, all seemingly random. But then they shifted. A porch, a window, then another window. Same house, different angles. The shots weren't casual. They were framed, deliberate, like someone documenting, watching. Then she started appearing. Same woman, mid to late 30s, shoulder-length dark hair, always captured through glass, windows, a cracked mirror, a windshield. None of the photos were posed. In one, she brushed her hair in what looked like a bathroom. In another, she was curled on a couch, sleeping. A few were taken from a distance, grainy but unmistakably targeted. Then came the close-ups. Zoomed in. Tight. One caught her eyes mid-blink, the reflection in her pupils shockingly crisp. In another, her mouth was slightly open, mid-sentence or maybe breathing. The last image made my stomach twist. She was staring directly at the camera, dead on, lit by a harsh flash. Her expression was complicated, recognition, confusion, maybe even fear, but not surprise. It was like she knew the lens would find her, like she'd been expecting it. "You know her?" I jumped. Ben was behind me. I hadn't heard him move. He was standing in the doorway now, unmoving. "No," I croaked, voice dry. I zipped the bag slowly. "She's my ex," he said. Used to be obsessed with photography. Said cameras could catch things that weren't meant to be seen. People's secrets. Things between the seconds. More. I didn't answer. I just backed a step toward the door. "She left months ago," he continued. "Didn't even say goodbye. Just vanished. Told me someone was watching her. Said she could feel it, like a lens on her, like it stared back. Ben smiled. It was tight and joyless, like a joke no one else understood. She always finds the lens, he said, stepping closer. She always sees it. I slid a hand into my pocket, fingers wrapping around my car keys. My instincts were screaming now. Run, run, now. I think I got one last shot, he whispered, the night she stopped moving. Then he lunged. I dropped the camera bag and stumbled backward, crashing against the floor. He grabbed at my arm, but I swung blindly and felt something crunch. His chin, throat, I don't know. He reeled back. I kicked free, scrambled into the hall, but he grabbed my ankle. I kicked again, once, twice. His grip loosened. I crawled, then sprinted toward the front door. It was locked, deadbolt. He was right behind me. No time. I backed up, then hurled myself through the front window. Glass shattered around me as I tumbled through, landing hard on the porch, then rolling into the mud-caked yard. My arm was cut, my knees screamed, but I was moving. Somehow, I was on my feet, running. My car was parked half a block down. I didn't look back. I just ran. I threw myself into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and peeled away with shaking hands. I didn't stop until I reached the police station across town. I stumbled inside, bloodied and out of breath. They took me seriously, thank God. I gave them everything, the address, the emails, the pictures. The next morning, a detective called. They'd gone to the house. It was empty. Not just empty, condemned. Electricity had been shut off for months. The entire structure was slated for demolition. No furniture inside, no chair, no mattress, no man named Ben on any records. But they found one thing. In the back bedroom, crushed beneath a melted, partially burned camera bag, was a memory card. The data was mostly corrupted, except for one image. A photo of me, standing on the porch, reaching for the doorbell. Time stamped 12 minutes before I ever arrived. Story 5. Craigslist mirror. I used to think Craigslist was harmless. Just a virtual garage sale, somewhere you could score a free couch, snag an old lamp, or scroll through the oddball listings for a laugh. I never thought it could lead to anything serious, certainly not something that would cling to my mind like mold, seeping into my sleep, my sanity, my sense of reality. But here I am. At the time, I was living alone in a dingy 2-room apartment at the very edge of Franklin City. It wasn't a terrible area, but it was the kind of place where the streetlights flickered more than they shone, and people walked fast with their heads down. My building had that smell, a mix of mildew, old takeout, and something else you could never quite place. Not ideal, but affordable. I was in the process of piecing life back together after a breakup and a job loss. You know the kind, when it feels like someone pulled the rug out from under your entire existence and you're crawling around trying to find solid footing. I worked a mind-numbing clerical job downtown. Spreadsheets, receipts, emails, the usual blend of monotony and quiet despair. Every night, to distract myself from the creeping silence of the apartment, I scrolled Craigslist. I'd mostly hang out in the free section, not even looking for anything specific. It became a ritual, a small comfort, like a lottery scratcher with zero stakes. Sometimes I'd pick up a beat-up end table or a chipped mug. Once I even scored a box of old horror VHS tapes. They barely played, but it made me feel like I was curating something, building a life out of forgotten junk. Then I saw it. The listing was brief. Antique mirror, heavy, some damage on the back. First come, first served, will help load. No emojis, no filler. Just a single attached photo, grainy and dark, like it had been taken in the corner of a cluttered garage. The mirror stood tall, maybe 6 feet, with a thick carved wooden frame. At first I thought the designs up the sides were vines, but the longer I stared, the less they looked like plants. The shapes twisted unnaturally like limbs or faces, bent, distorted expressions stretched along the frame in grotesque agony. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt drawn to it, like it had chosen me. Before I even realized what I was doing, I had already messaged the poster. He replied almost instantly. "Come tonight, bring cash." He dropped an address in a part of town I didn't recognize, somewhere between Glenham and Holloway, where the houses all wore metal bars like prison uniforms and streetlights blinked out like dying stars. I hesitated for a second. Something in my gut said don't, but I went anyway. The house was a sagging one-story nestled between 2 empty, graffiti-tagged duplexes. The lawn was wild, tall grass swaying like it was breathing. A single porch bulb flickered overhead, casting an anemic yellow glow on a man who stood smoking. He didn't speak when I got out, just nodded once and motioned toward the open garage. The mirror was leaned against the far wall, wrapped in a faded blue blanket that looked like it had been there since the 70s. I pulled it back and nearly recoiled. Up close, the carvings were horrific. The vines were actually human forms, at least partially. Faces with wide, hollow mouths frozen mid-scream, eyes gouged or blackened. Some of the bodies seemed to be writhing into one another, flesh melting into twisted unity. "It's heavy," the man said from behind me. His voice was cracked, like he hadn't used it in days. "I'll help you load it." I nodded and reached for the cash, but he didn't take it. Instead, he stared at the mirror, jaw clenched. "You'll want to keep it covered," he said. "Mirrors like that, they shouldn't catch the moon." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" But he was already walking back into the house. That should have been my sign to leave it, but I didn't. Back at my place, I left the mirror wrapped and leaned it against the wall in the hallway just across from my bedroom door. I figured I'd clean it up in the morning, maybe mount it above the couch if I could manage the weight. But even covered, I could feel it, not just physically. It was like a pressure in the air, like static crawling across your skin. I avoided looking at it, or maybe it was the other way around. That night I woke up abruptly. No sound, no dream, just a jolt in my chest, like something invisible had yanked me out of sleep. The air was cold, too cold. My bedroom door, which I always kept shut, was cracked open. Through the gap, I could see part of the mirror. Something was standing in the reflection. I sat up, breath caught in my throat. The shape was tall, motionless, and just wrong, like a man carved out of shadow. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. Still there. When I finally found the courage to switch on the hallway light and step out, there was nothing. The mirror hadn't moved, but the blanket had slipped, just enough to reveal part of the glass. I told myself it was a dream, a trick of the light, but the days that followed proved otherwise. Reflections started acting strange, lagging. I'd smile, and the mirror would smile a beat later. Once, I caught it grinning before I did. Another time, I saw a shadow in the background behind me, but when I turned, I was alone. I stopped making eye contact with it, started taking long routes around the hallway just to avoid being in its gaze. One night, I threw a sheet over it and shoved it in the closet. The next morning it was back in the hallway, still covered but somehow moved. I hadn't touched it, at least not consciously. Was I sleepwalking? That's what I told myself. Until the dreams started. I was standing in front of the mirror, but the reflection wasn't me. Its eyes were hollow voids, its face slack and unreadable. When I spoke, it didn't echo me, it just stared. Until one night the dream changed. I wasn't facing the mirror anymore, I was inside it, trapped, watching from the other side as something that looked like me wandered my apartment. It mimicked me, wore my clothes, followed my routines, but it wasn't me, it felt gleeful. One night, the thing in the dream turned to the mirror and waved. After that, I stopped sleeping, completely. My co-workers noticed. My skin grew pale, my eyes bloodshot, my voice weak. I told them I had a sinus infection. Then came the neighbor. He lived upstairs, usually kept to himself. But that night he knocked. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept either. "You okay?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck. "Yeah," I lied. "Why?" "I keep hearing voices from your apartment, late, but they don't sound like you." That night, I heard it too. A whispering, not in my room, but from inside the mirror. A low murmur, constant, like someone was holding a conversation just behind the glass. I couldn't make out the words, only the tone. Amused, hungry. That was the breaking point. At 3 a.m., I grabbed a jacket, wrapped the mirror in a blanket, and dragged it out. 2 flights down, my heart pounding with every thud. I shoved it into the back seat of my car, not caring about the upholstery. I drove straight to the dump. The guy at the gate just waved me through. I left the mirror at the far edge of the landfill, propped against a rusted fridge. I didn't look back. That night I slept, really slept, deep, dreamless, quiet. Days turned to weeks. I started feeling human again. I laughed, ate, worked, passed mirrors without flinching. Until one night, out of habit, I opened Craigslist. I wasn't looking for anything, just browsing. There it was. Same listing, same grainy photo, same words. Antique mirror, heavy, some damage on the back, first come, first served. I stared at the screen for a long time, then I shut my laptop. I haven't opened Craigslist since. and I don't keep mirrors anymore. Story 6. The Craigslist house. The worst year of my life started with a single phone call. I had been working a temp office job for nearly 6 months. I'd gotten my hopes up, thinking it was a stepping stone that I could settle in and make something of it. I was wrong. One morning, my manager pulled me aside with a strained smile, handed me a half-hearted handshake, and said the company was cutting costs. No warning, no severance, no compassion, just an awkward smile and a quick dismissal. The next few days were a blur. My roommate, who had been a bit distant for weeks, packed up and left without even a word, just a note on the counter and half a pack of ramen in the cabinet. Rent was due in a week, and I had barely $100 left. My car, which I depended on, had a cracked radiator that was on its last legs, and I had nowhere to go. I slept in the car for 2 nights, parked in a lot across from a convenience store, but it wasn't sustainable. I needed something, anything to survive. That's when I turned to Craigslist. I didn't expect much. A cheap couch, some random item I could sell, or maybe a side gig, but in the midst of all the obvious scams, one listing caught my eye. Room for rent. 12 month, utilities included. Must like privacy. No images. The price was laughable. It seemed like a prank, but I was desperate. A reply came almost instantly. Come by at 7:00 p.m. today. Bring ID. Joseph H. No phone number, no further details, just an address I didn't recognize and an oddly formal tone. But what choice did I have? I typed back, I'll be there. The house was in a neighborhood I'd never heard of. It wasn't dangerous exactly, just forgotten. The streets got narrower the deeper I drove until my GPS started spitting out errors. When I finally reached the address, I wasn't even sure I had arrived. The house itself looked ordinary, old, a bit run down, but not terrifying. The yard was unkempt, and the porch light flickered intermittently, casting long, unsettling shadows. A man was standing on the front porch. He was tall, gaunt, and uncomfortably still, like a mannequin in a forgotten department store. His face didn't quite match up. Kind eyebrows, but a mouth that was too thin and cold. His slacks were crisp, the white button-up shirt tucked in too perfectly, as if he had just stepped out of some formal gathering. You made it, he said, his voice flat. Not a question, just a statement. I stood there, unsure what to do, until he turned without waiting and opened the front door. He didn't offer to shake my hand or even acknowledge my presence beyond the basics. He just walked in, and I was left with no choice but to follow. Inside, the house was clean, almost too clean. There were no personal touches, no family photos, no plants. It looked like a sterile show home, something you might see in a catalogue or a poorly staged Airbnb. The air felt thick with the kind of silence that only comes when people deliberately avoid making noise. There was a coldness to the place, a sense that nobody had truly lived there in years. Joseph didn't offer a tour. Instead, he led me straight to the basement door. He unlocked it with a large brass key, swinging it open with a gesture that felt almost rehearsed. You'll have your own space, he said. Bathroom's in there, fridge is yours, the door locks from the inside. The basement was small and cold. There was a low twin bed in the corner, a wooden dresser shoved against one wall, and an old desk with peeling paint. The fridge hummed loudly in the corner, the sound almost oppressive in the quiet space. The tiny bathroom was no better, rust in the sink, grime clinging to the edges. It wasn't ideal, but it was livable. It was also the only option I had. Joseph turned to me just as I was starting to mentally calculate how long I could survive on the $200 he'd agreed to take as rent. Rent is due on the 1st, he said. No guests. Be quiet after midnight. Don't go upstairs, ever. I blinked, confused. Why not? It's not safe, he said, with a finality that sent a chill down my spine. I tried to brush it off as one of those strange house rules that landlords sometimes have, but something in his tone, something cold and distant, made me uneasy. He handed me a clipboard with a lease on it, printed on a single sheet of yellowed paper. I signed it quickly, the desperation in my gut overwhelming my common sense. The first week passed in a weird silence. I barely saw Joseph, except for the occasional muffled movement upstairs at night. There were slow footsteps pacing back and forth in the hallway above me, always between midnight and 3 a.m. At first I thought it was just the house settling, but the sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic to ignore. After a few nights, I got used to it. It became part of the background noise. But then the footsteps stopped, and that's when things really started to get strange. I began to hear other things. Faint creaks outside the basement door, low, rhythmic sounds like someone was stepping, then stopping, then stepping again. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers, but they were too soft to make out. Just a constant murmur, like someone talking to themselves behind the door. I told myself it was the house settling or my mind playing tricks on me, but it never felt like that. Then, the dreams started. Every night, the same dream. I would wake up in my bed, unable to move, completely frozen. My body felt like stone. I couldn't speak, couldn't scream. And just outside the door, I would see someone standing. I couldn't make out any details, just a shadowy figure, tall and unmoving. Every time the door would open just a crack, just enough for me to see them, but never enough to see them clearly. Then one night, I woke up and found the door actually open. Just a few inches, but it had definitely been closed when I went to sleep. The lock was still in place, functional, but the door was open. I checked it over and over, trying to rationalize it, but I couldn't explain it. The next day, I waited for Joseph to come home. He had a brown grocery bag in his hand and looked surprised when I spoke to him. "Have you been in the basement at night?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Joseph blinked once. Then again, "No," he said flatly, brushing me off. "You must have dreamed it." He sounded annoyed, almost offended that I'd even ask. His answer was so quick, so final, I had no choice but to accept it. But after that, I started noticing more. The way the basement door frame had long, deep gouges in it. They weren't scratches, they were gouges, like something or someone had been dragged out of the basement and clawed at the frame as it struggled. I tried not to think about it, but every time I passed that door, I couldn't help but look at those marks. Then, one Friday, Joseph told me he was leaving for the weekend. He said I could use the kitchen, but he added, "Don't go in the attic, it's not safe." Same tone, same warning. I was starting to get suspicious, but I didn't want to push it. Saturday night, I couldn't resist. I waited until midnight, then grabbed a wrench from the kitchen drawer and pried the padlock off the attic door. It creaked open with a protesting groan, revealing a pitch-black room. The air inside was thick, stale, and smelled like something rotten covered in cheap cologne. My stomach churned as I flicked on the single light bulb dangling from the ceiling. What I saw made my heart stop. The attic was packed, shelves lined with VHS tapes, hundreds of them. Each tape had a label, Subject 1A, Test B. Some even had brief descriptions like female, blonde, or male, glasses. Then I saw it, a tape with my full name written on it. I grabbed it and ran downstairs, barely able to breathe. There was an old VCR hooked up to a tiny TV in the corner of the living room. My hands shook as I shoved the tape in. The footage was grainy, black and white, with a timestamp in the corner. It was me, sleeping in my bed, the same room I had just slept in. Then the door creaked open. Joseph stepped inside, standing over me for what felt like forever, just watching. He didn't move. He didn't do anything. Then he reached up, pressing something against the wall. I hadn't noticed it before, but there, near the ceiling, was a tiny lens, a camera taped to the corner. I tore it down and smashed it on the floor. Then I heard footsteps. Joseph was back. I didn't think. I ran. Left everything behind, my shoes, my ID. I sprinted out the door, down the street, not stopping until I reached a gas station. I was barefoot, crying, shaking. The cashier called the police. When they arrived, the house was empty. No furniture, no tapes, no trace of Joseph H. The attic was bare, the basement spotless, like everything had been wiped clean. They checked the records. Joseph didn't exist, no ID, no lease. The house was registered to a shell company with no listed owners, no tax records, nothing. It had no history. That was months ago. Now, I live on the other side of the city. I triple-check every lock before bed. I sleep with a bat beside my pillow, and every time I close my eyes, I'm still haunted by the vision of that door creaking open. I haven't had a solid night's sleep since... Story 7. The Antique Mirror. It all started just after my long-term relationship fell apart. I was fresh out of the apartment I had shared with Marissa for the past 3 years. The memories were still fresh. Shared furniture, bookshelves filled with novels we'd both read, coffee mugs that we'd bought together. And then, just like that, it was all gone. I was left with nothing but a mattress on the floor and a half-dead plant that I kept forgetting to water. I had a lot to figure out, but I told myself it was for the best, a fresh start. I rented a little duplex outside Boone, North Carolina. It was cheap, old and run down, but quiet. I didn't mind that. I had no expectations except to get my life together. My bank account was as empty as my heart. I was too proud to ask anyone for help, so Craigslist became my nightly ritual. I would scroll through the free section, hoping to find something useful. It wasn't even about finding a bargain anymore. It was about hoping to stumble upon something that felt like it had character. Something, anything, that might fill the void. One night as I mindlessly scrolled, a listing caught my eye. Free antique mirror, must pick up tonight. No details, no explanation, just a single blurry photo. The mirror looked old, at least 5 feet tall, framed in dark, heavy wood with carvings I couldn't make out. The photo quality was awful, and the angle felt off, like the person taking the picture wasn't really trying to show the mirror at all, but to document it, almost like it was proof of something. I hesitated. Something about it didn't sit right, but my curiosity got the best of me. I emailed the poster immediately without thinking twice. Seconds later, I got a reply. Come now, bring a truck. Back door will be open. Address. No phone number. No name. Just an address I didn't recognize. The message was short, blunt, and strangely formal. That should have been my cue to walk away, but something in me pushed me to go. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even think it through. I just grabbed my keys, threw some ratchet straps in the back of my truck, and drove into the night like an idiot heading straight into a cautionary tale. The deeper I drove into the dark countryside, the fewer houses I passed. My cell service dropped about 20 minutes in. I remember that clearly because I tried to pull up the address again and my map app froze. The GPS couldn't recalibrate, and I had no idea where I was going, but I kept driving. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the place. A narrow gravel driveway led to a small, dilapidated house. It looked like it hadn't had a visitor in years. No porch light. A half-collapsed barn sagged on one side, and the mailbox was rusted and leaning sideways. No name, no sign of life. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment staring at the house. It was still, not peaceful still, but unsettling still. It felt like a room that had been sealed off too long. Everything about it was wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath. The back door was open, just like the message said. I didn't know what to expect, but I felt the unease crawl up my spine as soon as I stepped out of the truck. The air hit me like a punch, a damp, musty smell, but underneath it something sharper, metallic, like rusted pipes or old blood. The house was dark except for the pale moonlight filtering through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. There was no TV, no music, no signs of life at all. It was as if someone had just abandoned it in a hurry. I stepped down the short hallway, careful not to make any noise. The floor creaked under my weight, like it was remembering how to collapse. That's when I saw it. The mirror. It was leaning against the wall just outside what appeared to be a bedroom door. Up close, the frame was more disturbing than I had imagined. The carvings were faces, tiny, warped expressions of agony. Dozens of them, mouths frozen in mid-scream, eyes bulging in terror. The craftsmanship was too intricate to be accidental, too intentional to be comforting. I couldn't stop staring at it. The glass was fogged, but it wasn't dust or dirt. There was something inside it, swirling. It looked like smoke, trapped between the panes, shifting as though it had a life of its own. I stared at my reflection. It was me, but wrong. The hallway and the reflection didn't match the light around me. Everything looked dimmer, darker. My eyes looked sunken, like I hadn't slept in weeks. But what really unnerved me was how my reflection wasn't moving right. When I blinked, it didn't blink. When I tilted my head, it lagged just a beat off, like it was playing catch-up. But the worst part? I saw something in the reflection. Over my shoulder, at the end of the hallway, was a figure, tall, still, unmoving. I turned around. No one. The hallway was empty. I stared back at the mirror, and the figure was still there. But when I looked again, I couldn't see it in the reflection. The hallway looked normal again. I told myself it was just shadows, just nerves, but deep down I knew it wasn't. I reached out to grab the mirror. The wood was ice cold, damp, like it had been stored in a basement for years. The second I pulled it away from the wall, everything changed. The air grew thick, suffocating, like I was trying to breathe through a wet towel. I heard something creak above me. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed through the house. but there was no second floor. There couldn't be. I didn't check. I didn't think to. I dragged the mirror down the hall, out the back door, and loaded it into my truck. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped the ratchet straps twice before I could secure it properly. The whole drive back, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. I couldn't stop myself, even though I knew it was ridiculous. I was convinced I would see someone sitting next to the mirror, or worse, someone sitting in the back seat. When I got home, I left the mirror in the hallway outside my bedroom. I couldn't bring myself to bring it in. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure standing behind me again, just like in the reflection. The next morning, I decided to take a picture of the mirror. I thought maybe if I documented it, I could convince myself that I was just imagining things, but the mirror wouldn't show up. The camera wouldn't focus on it. The screen just went black every time I aimed it at the glass, like something was blocking it out entirely. Then the dreams started. They didn't happen every night, but almost every night. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., always 3 a.m., like clockwork. I couldn't remember the full dream, but I remember flashes. A dark room, cold air, whispers so close they felt like breath on my neck. After 2 weeks of this, I found myself standing in front of the mirror again, unable to remember how I got there. It was in the middle of the night. I was standing in the hallway, staring into the glass, and my reflection was smiling at me. A wide, frozen grin. It raised its hand. It waved. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I grabbed my keys and drove to my friend Jared's house. I begged him to let me crash, and I stayed there for 4 nights trying to sleep, trying to forget. But I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. When I finally went back to my place, the mirror was gone. The locks weren't broken. Nothing was missing. But there was an empty space in the hallway where it had been, and a faint, dark stain on the floorboards. To this day, I don't know what happened. Maybe someone broke in and stole it. Maybe I lost my mind. But I can't escape the feeling that the mirror is still out there somewhere, watching. Story 8. The leather sectional. I work in IT, which basically means I spend a lot of time behind screens and not nearly enough time outside. It's one of those jobs that pulls you into the digital realm so much that you forget there's a world beyond your computer. A few years ago, I moved into a small apartment, and rather than blow my savings on new furniture, I made a game out of furnishing it without spending a single dollar. Craigslist became my go-to. I loved the thrill of finding great stuff for free. Some people scroll TikTok for hours. I scrolled the free listings like a treasure hunter, always hoping for that hidden gem. Over the years, I found all sorts of things. Coffee tables still bearing their original price tags. A vintage microwave that looked like it belonged on the set of Stranger Things, but worked better than anything modern. And once, I got an entire dining set for free because someone didn't want to move it down 2 flights of stairs. After a while, I started thinking I had some kind of gift for this Craigslist hunting business. I became cocky, believing I could find anything I wanted for free. That's when I saw the ad. Free leather sectional, great condition, must pick up this weekend. The photos showed a stunning forest green couch, long, sleek lines, and an almost flawless appearance. It looked like something straight out of a high-end designer catalogue. No visible damage, no sagging cushions, nothing. It felt too good to be true, but hey, I had seen Stranger Things. Sometimes people really do just want to get rid of stuff quickly. I didn't waste a moment. I messaged the poster. His name was Don, and he replied almost instantly, saying he was glad I reached out. He mentioned he had received a few messages already, but I was the first to confirm pickup. Then he told me something that struck me as odd. He wanted to meet at a gas station outside of town, rather than giving me his address right away. I asked why, and he said something about having a bad experience in the past. Apparently, someone had shown up early and tried to take things off his property. I understood that. People can be flaky or shady when it comes to free things. Still, there was a small voice in the back of my head saying, "This is weird," but I shrugged it off. I figured I was overthinking it. We agreed to meet the next day, Friday, around 5 p.m, right after I finished work. I left a little earlier than usual to beat the traffic. The sun was starting to dip when I turned off the main highway. The houses quickly thinned out, replaced by long stretches of fields and patches of woods. The gas station was exactly where he said it would be, small, isolated, and old. One of those places where half the lights don't work, and the pavement is cracked and uneven. I pulled in, and there it was, a battered grey pickup already parked by one of the air pumps, its engine still running. Don stepped out as I rolled up. He was a tall guy, probably in his late 30s or early 40s, thin, with sunken cheeks and long hair tied back in a ponytail. His appearance gave off the impression that he hadn't seen a good shower in a while. He wore a faded green flannel and jeans that had seen better days. His smile was too wide, almost rehearsed. He reached out his hand as I rolled down my window. "You must be Jay," he said, his grip firm but a little too tight, damp like he'd just washed his hands but forgot to dry them. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "Don, right? Thanks for making the drive." I told him I'd been looking forward to the couch. "Of course," he said, still smiling. "Couch is just a few miles from here, at my uncle's old place." That was the first time he'd mentioned his uncle. I raised an eyebrow. "Your uncle's place?" I asked. "Yeah," Don said, as if it was no big deal. "He passed last year, and the property's just been sitting there. I keep some stuff there, kind of quiet out that way." I nodded slowly, but something didn't sit right with me. Why meet at a gas station? And why had he mentioned the uncle's place without me asking? I chalked it up to him being a little odd, but nothing that screamed run. Don gestured to his truck. "Follow me," he said. I hesitated for a moment. My phone was already down to 1 bar, but I told myself I was overthinking things. Maybe he really didn't want strangers showing up uninvited. I got back in my car and followed him. We drove down a winding, narrow road that soon turned into gravel, then dirt. The trees grew closer on both sides, casting long shadows across the trail. Every so often, I glimpsed rusted fencing or an abandoned shed, each of them silently decaying. We drove for about 10 minutes, and then his truck slowed and turned onto a barely visible trail. My tires crunched over sticks and loose rocks as we moved deeper into the woods. I started to wonder if I had made a huge mistake, but just as I was about to pull over and leave, I saw the house. If you could call it that. It was small and run down, one story with peeling white paint in wide, dry strips. Boards had been nailed crudely over some of the windows, and the front porch sagged to one side as though it had been stepped on too many times in one spot. There were no lights on, no cars except for Don's. I parked slowly, my instincts screaming, "Bad idea." But Don was already climbing the porch steps, pulling keys from his pocket. "It's just inside," he called out. "Front room!" I got out of my car slowly. The air felt wrong, thick, still, but not silent. It was as if something was holding its breath. The second I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Dampness, mold, and something sharp beneath it, like iron. The air was much colder than it should have been, and it was dark enough that I had to squint to see. The couch was exactly where he said it would be, untouched, too clean. Not a speck of dust, no fading at all. It sat there like it had been placed carefully in the center of the decay around it. "Looks good, right?" Don said, stepping toward the couch. "Just a little tear underneath, but I want to show you." He grabbed a heavy flashlight from a nearby table, but he didn't turn it on. He just stood there, one hand on the flashlight, the other hanging loosely at his side, eyes fixed on me. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Something was off. Something wasn't right. "I think I'm going to pass," I said, taking a step back toward the door. I didn't realize how far out this was. Don's smile didn't falter, but his eyes changed. Something behind them went dark. "You sure?" he asked, his voice unnervingly calm. "Came all this way?" I nodded quickly. "Yeah, it's okay. Thanks, though." He didn't argue. He just stood there, watching as I turned and started walking toward the door. My legs felt stiff, like I couldn't move quickly enough. I had just reached the front door when I heard it. A single heavy thump from above, followed by a dragging sound. Slow, deliberate, something big being pulled across the floor. I froze. My heart stopped. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Don cocked his head, too slow. "Raccoons," he said. "This place gets them bad." I didn't say anything. I just grabbed the door handle, opened it, and walked straight to my car. I didn't look back. I didn't run, but every nerve in my body was telling me to get out. My hands shook as I turned the key, and Don stayed on the porch, watching, still smiling. I didn't stop driving until I was back on the highway. I pulled into a lit gas station and just sat there, breathing hard. My phone lit up, and I messaged a friend, something vague about a weird Craigslist meetup, just to let someone know I was okay. But then 2 nights later I saw a Reddit post, "Woman missing after Craigslist pickup." The photo made my stomach drop. The woman looked almost like me, same hair color. She'd gone to meet someone near that same stretch of highway. They found her car with the doors locked, purse still inside. The last text she sent said she was going to pick up a couch. The ad had vanished by the time anyone tried to trace it. I didn't sleep that night or the next. I started having nightmares. Walking through that house again. Hallways warping, stairs creaking above me. That dragging sound. Sometimes, just before I woke up, I'd see a face at the top of the stairs. Not Don's, someone else. A gaunt figure, with wide eyes and a mouth that moved but no sound. I deleted my Craigslist account, deleted the app. I gave away most of the stuff I'd picked up over the years. I couldn't stand to look at any of it. And now I keep thinking, what if that ad wasn't meant for just anyone? What if it was meant for me?